The Commission of Inquiry set up to elucidate the NGARBUH incident that led to wanton destruction of life and property has released its findings, indicting both military officers and some vigilante groups for misinforming and inducing the government into error. The Ministry of Decentralization urges local councils to occupy a pivotal role in the ongoing fight against the COVID-19 pandemic and ensure that the killer virus does not spread its tentacles into the backcountry. And the third headline, the Cameroon Electricity Transportation Corporation springs into action to arrest an embarrassing power failure that left the entire capital city in blackout last night with a heavy-duty truck causing massive damage on one of the interconnected network of the country's electricity utility company. Those are the lead stories of this edition. Hello, welcome to the program. I am Ben Meno Pufong. And we open this edition with this communique that is coming in from the Commission of Inquiry set up by government following the incident that occurred in NGARBUH in the Donga Mountain Division some months back. And the communique reads, following the tragic events of the night of the 13th to the 14th of February 2020 in the locality of NGARBUH and in pursuance of high instructions of the President of the Republic, His Excellency Paul Biya, the Minister Delegate at the Presidency of the Republic in charge of the defense set up on the 17th of February 2020 a joint commission of inquiry whose tasks were, one, to shed light on the circumstances under which these tragic events occurred, and two, to establish the responsibilities for the various actions. Under the authority of the Secretary of State of the Ministry of Defense in charge of the National Gendarmerie and chaired by a military, judicial and legal officer, the Commission of Inquiry was composed of Army and National Gendarmerie officers. Exceptionally, the Commission of Inquiry resorted to the services of the following observers: Mr. Chemuto Divine Banda, President of the National Commission on Human Rights, Freedoms, His Grace George Nkwo, Bishop of the Kumbu Diocese, Mr. Hamadu Baba Saleh, Imam of the Tumbo Central Mosque, Mrs. Digabong Ne Mi Bibiana, Chief Executive Officer of the non-governmental organization called Bidulem Humanitarian Association of Peace and Hope, Captain Iberi Ziem Hamed Karim, Chief Prevention Officer of the 50th Group of Firefighters in Bamenda, Mr. Chenwi Chrysanthus Ashu, Regional Secretary of the National Commission on Human Rights and Freedoms for the Northwest Region. On the instruction of the head of state, the United Nations organization was requested to participate in the work of the commission. In response to the United Nations promise, the United Nations promised to provide technical support that the Cameroonian justice, which is now in charge of the matter, could use as and when necessary. The Commission of Inquiry conducted field visits to Bamenda, Kumbu, Kambe, Tumbo and NGARBUH, where it recorded various findings, collected and analyzed clues and gathered evidence which enabled it to reconstruct the scene of these tragic events. At the end of this work, the Commission arrived at the following conclusions. The village of NGARBUH, located in Du Subdivision, Donga Mountain Division, Northwest Region, had become a center where secessionist terrorists regrouped and a logistic pool for the supply of arms, ammunition and fuel for secessionist groups located in Bui Division and part of Ngokitunja. The terrorists were engaged in all sorts of abuses against the local population, cattle rustling, rape, assault, etc., which warranted an intervention by the defense and security forces in order to protect them. To this end, a reconnaissance mission was authorized on the 12th of February 2020 by Major Nyangano Zeshal Eric, commander of the 52nd Motorized Infantry Battalion BIM in Kambe. It was led by Sergeant Babagida, commander of Ntumbo Joint Regiment. The detachment of the Ntumbo base on the 13th of February 2020 at 10 a.m. with 3 servicemen and 2 gendarmes. As they advanced, the detachment commander decided to enlist 17 members of the local vigilante group. At the entrance of the village of NGARBUH, the group split into 2 teams to comb NGARBUH 2 and NGARBUH 3 neighborhoods. Upon entering the NGARBUH 3 neighborhood, the place of the tragedy, the team led by Sergeant Babangida, comprising gendarme Sanding Cyril, Private First Class Haranga, and 10 members of the Vigilante Committee launched an attack based on information provided by a repentant terrorist and a farmer from the area. Following the exchange of gunfire, during which 5 terrorists were killed, many weapons seized, the detachment discovered that 3 women and 10 children had died because of this action. Panic-stricken, the 3 servicemen, with the help of some members of the vigilante group, tried to conceal the facts by causing fire. On his return to Ntumbo, Sergeant Babangida, who led the operation, submitted a deliberately biased report on his superior, a report on which the government initially based its statement. In terms of responsibility, the Commission has established that Major Nyangano Zeshal Erik, commander of the 52nd Motorized Infantry Battalion, who knew how sensitive the NGARBUH area was due to the prevailing high inter-community tension, failed to personally supervise operations carried out by his troops. Sergeant Babangida, involved armed civilians in a military operations, failed to control his troop during the operations, ordered the burning down of houses, and deliberately produced a false report on the operation and its toll. Gendarme Sanding Cyril took part in an operation that caused the death of several persons and the burning of houses. Private First Class Haranga took part in an operation that caused the death of several persons and the burning of houses. The 10 members of the Vigilante Committee enlisted in NGARBUH 3, who have not yet been identified, took part in an operation that caused the death of several persons and the burning of houses. After taking cognizance of the findings of the Commission of Inquiry, the President of the Republic has ordered the following measures. 1. The institution of a disciplinary proceedings against Major Nyangano Zeshal Erik, commander of the 52nd Motorized Infantry Battalion, and all the servicemen who took part in the NGARBUH operation. 2. The arrest of Sergeant Babangida, Gendarme Sanding Cyril, and Private First Class Haranga Gilbert, as well as the 10 members of the Vigilante Committee involved in the NGARBUH 3 tragic events, and the institution of legal proceedings against them. The servicemen concerned are already at the disposal of the Yaoundé Military Tribunal. The concerned members of the Vigilante Committee are actively being tracked down. 3. The exhumation of the corpses of the victims in order to give them a decent burial at the cost of the state and to establish the necessary evidence to bring out the truth. 4. The identification of the rightful claimants of the victims by the administration to enable the state to pay appropriate compensation and indemnities. 5. The strengthening of security in the village of NGARBUH, especially by creating a military base and setting up other public services which should help to ensure better protection of civilians against the abuses of armed groups and the return of displaced persons and the easing of inter-community tension. The President of the Republic once more extends his condolences and those of the entire nation to the families of the victims and wishes to assure them of the determination to ensure that justice is done. He reiterates his firm instructions to the relevant officials and the various levels of hierarchy of the defense and security forces to ensure with increased determination that they always perform their duty with professionalism. They particularly ensure the protection of civilians and see to it that allegations of any exactions are systematically investigated and, when necessary, properly punished. The President of the Republic thanks the members of the Commission as well as all national and international stakeholders who contributed in various respects to shedding light on the NGARBUH events and to making it possible for justice to be rendered to the victims. He reaffirms the readiness of the Cameroonian government to continue to cooperate with bilateral and multilateral partners as well as with non-governmental organizations to further the protection and promotion of human rights in Cameroon. He, however, recalls that the protection of human rights is a noble and serious cause that should be defended with vigilance and firmness as well as with serenity and discernment without political motivations which can only weaken it. The President of the Republic reaffirms his attachment to the search for ways and means of peacefully resolving the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest regions in line with the recommendations of the major national dialogue. And it's done the 21st of April 2020, signed Ferdinand Nganga, the Minister of State, Secretary General at the Presidency of the Republic. And so the final report of the Commission on the inquiry has come to clarify a situation which up to this day still has been living graphic memories within the national and international psyche. Kilian Difon revisits the context and the diversified opinions that characterize the event that gave rise to truncated, at times exaggerated interpretations when the news turned to the national and international psyche some weeks back.
It is simply referred to as NGARBUH and has come to be known as the NGARBUH massacre, but it is actually the story of two farming hamlets, Nga and Buh, situated in Tumbo village in Du subdivision of the Ndonga and Mantum division of the Northwest region. Tumbo village shares boundaries with Mbam and Kum, two other remote areas found in Buh division, and on Sambongari on the Nigerian end of the area. These factors favored what public authorities called a fertile ground and hideout for separatist fighters and general crime perpetrators. The forces of defense and security traced some of these people of the underworld to this hamlet, and on the night breaking February 14, the clash that killed innocent people, including women and children, happened. There has this far been conflicting figures on what is known as collateral killings. The head of state instructed the setting up of a commission of inquiry, and today the results are out to clarify the situation.
And with me in the studio is Chief Unity Palace correspondent Ashunyente, who is here to clear some dark points, if need be, of the findings of the Commission of Inquiry that was set up by the President of the Republic to inquire into the incidents that happened at NGARBUH. The first question I want to ask you, Ashunyente, good evening.
Good evening, Ben. Thank you very much.
Yeah, what is your reaction to this particular finding of that commission that has just come out? Are you surprised by by the serenity with which the work was done?
Well, I'm not surprised, Ben, because that was why the commission was set up in the first place. This was a denouement that Cameroonians were looking forward to. It has come. I'm sure all Cameroonians who want transparency are happy with the outcome, whichever way it goes. Remember, Ben, when this incident first occurred in January 2020. There was an initial reaction from the Director of Communication at the Ministry of Defense, then the Minister Delegate at the Presidency in charge of Defense, Joseph Betia Somo, also reacted. The reaction of the government at that time was based on information that the government had in its possession from its field commander. That is very normal for the government after an incident of that nature to seek to have information from the persons it has on the ground. So the government acted in good faith. But the government did not end at that. The government wanted to know more. That is why President Paul Biya instructed that this commission of inquiry should be put in place to probe that incident so as to shed light into it so that all Cameroonians will know what actually happened and what will be done thereafter. And that is what we have in front of us right now, the report of this independent commission of inquiry.
The report is here, and many people have just discovered it together with us. Let me ask you, what would you say about the quality of the findings of that commission?
Ben, I think 3 words can better describe this report of the commission of inquiry: credible, meticulous, and thorough. Take note, you just read the communique based on the report of the inquiry findings. They have clearly apportioned blame. Who did what, when? They didn't wash their hands like Pontius Pilate. They said this particular person did this, and of course the dates and the time were mentioned. Remember, the commission was not only made up of government officials, that is to say the military, administrative officials, but even independent personalities also took part. The United Nations was also invited to to lend advice, support to members of this commission. So it was, a commission that was open to various groups, non-governmental organizations. Even the Bishop of Kumbu, you remember at the beginning, was very much involved. All of these people were involved in determining the outcome, the result of that commission of inquiry. And so you see that the report has come actually apportioning blame to the military commanders who didn't respect the rules of engagement, because in any combat operation, there are rules of engagement that have to be respected by the military men and women who are sent to prosecute that particular incident. And so in this case, it did not turn out to be, and so we had abuses, and that is exactly what the commission said. But what will the findings of a commission of inquiry look like? What will be the necessity of a commission of inquiry, the findings, if the people who are guilty are not punished? That is why President Paul Biya didn't just end at that. He instructed that, of course, sanctions will be taken, administrative sanctions will be taken. Some of them have already been arrested. Some of them are already in Yaoundé at the military tribunal. They will go face judicial sanctions after a fair trial would have been undertaken. Those who are guilty will be sentenced or punished as such. Administratively, other sanctions too will be taken, especially against the commander of the 52nd Motorized Infantry Battalion in NGARBUH. That is Major Nyangono. And even the lieutenant and members of the vigilante groups who were involved in these abuses, all of them will be tracked down, and of course each of them will get a punishment commensurate with his or her involvement in this mishap.
Now, in that findings, the report of that commission, we hear that there were some serial killings in NGARBUH 1, NGARBUH 2, and NGARBUH 3. What would you say will all of what has been outlined in the commission, what would that mean to the family of those who were affected and whose family members have gone to the world beyond?
You will expect that, Ben, the family members were expecting this moment. Now they have heaved a sigh of relief because everybody was waiting for the outcome of this commission of inquiry. They will now heave a sigh of relief. They now have the result of the commission of inquiry. Now, the healing process has to begin right here and now, and President Paul Biya has begun the healing process. When, first of all, he repeats his condolences to the bereaved family. Very, very important. Secondly, he has ordered that the corpses of those who were buried be exhumed and given an appropriate burial. You know, we are Bantus. We need to bury our dead in a decent manner, as they usually say, so that their spirits could be at rest. All of this time, the spirit of the dead were not at rest, and so now President Paul Biya says they will be exhumed and given appropriate burial. And again, the heirs, you call that the rightful claimants of the disease, will be identified, and the government will give appropriate compensation for those who needed who need to be compensated. We know that no amount of money can bring back a lost one, but then they say you need a tablet of soap to wash the dresses that you use in mourning. And so it is very, very important.
Now tell me, we have known of commission of inquiries in Cameroon. Their results, most of them have remained, shelved in some drawers. This one, the results have come up very, very rapidly, and it has been brought to public notice. What lessons do we draw from this?
Ben, 4 major lessons can be drawn immediately from the publication of the results of this commission of inquiry. Number 1, that Cameroon is a state of law. A state of law, nobody is above the law. The law is above everybody. Dura lex sed lex. The law is hard, but it is the law. And of course, Cameroon respects human rights. Cameroon is a democracy, a fledgling democracy. Human rights have to be respected. And when they are abused somewhere, action has to be taken. That is the first lesson. The second lesson is that the Cameroonian army remains a professional army. It is not because a few wet blankets have abused the authority and have dragged the name of the army into mud that, of course, you will condemn the entire army. The Cameroonian army remains, of course, very, very professional and defends the territorial integrity of this country. The third reason is that President Paul Biya is determined to seek a holistic solution to the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions. He has done that since 2016 when all of these troubles began. And of course, the apogee was during the last major national dialogue from the 3rd of September to the 4th of October last. And the recommendations were that President Paul Biya should move ahead with the support of the Cameroonian people to seek a lasting solution. This is another confirmation that President Paul Biya wants to see a speedy end to the crisis. And lastly, that is the 4th lesson that we can draw. There are some birds of ill omen. We usually say that in Cameroon, if you want to hide something, create a commission of inquiry. But this is evidence that it is not true. This is plausible evidence that in Cameroon, nothing is hidden under the sun. Cameroon is a state of law. A commission of inquiry was created by the head of state. You saw the caliber of members who were members of that commission, and the results are out. So it is not true that in Cameroon, they hide things through the creation of commissions of inquiry. On the contrary, Cameroon seeks the truth, seeks to shed light on what is not known to the public. And this is evidence that President Paul Biya has shown to the rest of the nation that he remains a committed leader, he remains a credible leader who is close to his people and whose well-being, that's the well-being of the Cameroon people, remains his daily mantra since he was overwhelmingly voted by the Cameroonian people in October 2018. So Cameroonians can go to sleep, they can rest assured they have a government that cares, that looks after the flock.
Thank you very much, Ashu Nyenti, for coming, and most especially for your insights.
Thank you very much.
But you're not going away. Let us continue talking about the head of state. The news dropped yesterday like a massive relief that the President of the Republic has availed all the 360 subdivisions of the country with anti-COVID-19 kits worth 2 billion CFA francs, a special gift that came to add to the National Solidarity Fund he had earlier created with an initial sum of 1 billion CFA francs. All of them gestures which make you say, Kilian Ndifon, that President Paul Biya may be a man of few words, but his actions speak louder than 1,000 words. Kilian?
Leading by action, President Paul Biya's additional 2 billion CFA francs worth of anti-coronavirus kits comprises 4 million tablets of laundry soap, 2 million pieces of surgical and general use face masks, 75,000 household buckets, 40,000 hand wash cans, rapid test kits and respirators.
It is a national issue. It is a national problem. So it has to do with the lives of Cameroonians. So we have to serve our nation. We have to serve our brothers and sisters. So I agree with the President of the Republic, and the decision is something to be saluted.
When the head of state gives orientation, takes decision, the normal role of every militant is to work, to contribute to fight together with the head of state so that we could fight against coronavirus.
The gift is not an isolated gesture, since the president has a culture of support to victims of disasters such as gas, fire, floods, landslides, and terrorism.
This gesture is a humanitarian action, and we know the president has made it a culture in the past. When Cameroon is faced with a problem, he has always invited Cameroonians to put their heads together, and this has been done.
The decentralized nature of the gift also makes it beneficiarily targeted, with the governor, the senior divisional officer, the divisional officer, and the mayor intervening at their different spheres of competence, dispatching from Yaoundé in about 10 days.
And as it stands, the coronavirus is already making inroads into secondary towns of the country, necessitating a readjustment of a strategy to favor the concentration of preventive measures in neighborhoods and councils. That's how the Minister of Decentralization and Local Development has signed a release giving directives to councils on the decentralized strategy to fight back this invisible killer pandemic. It entails disinfecting public places and seeing to it that safety measures prescribed by the government are followed to the letter. Beatrice Losamba reports on how these directives would make a difference in the ongoing battle against the COVID-19 in Cameroon.
Coronavirus keeps going deeper in the country, finding warm hosts in secondary towns and forcing the government to readjust its strategy. Following the head of state's gesture to arm councils, the Minister of Decentralization and Local Development has instructed mayors to play a frontline role in the fight.
Those who are in the front line are the mayors. I will talk to my people who are the mayors to make sure that first they do understand what is awaited from them and that they do it as the Minister of Health wanted to be done.
As municipalities take the front bench, the minister's directives are clearly listed. They will now be given the power to provide care to COVID-19 patients, find space for new quarantine centers, sensitize the population and disinfect public spaces, especially markets, which as a result of the absence of social distancing measures seem to be most inviting to COVID-19 preventive measures now.
Tomorrow, with the mayor of the town, we will clean all the three markets of our council, Makolo Market, Madagascar Market and Wiche Market. And it's important for us to oblige the person who came and do their shop in the market to wear their masks.
Acting from the hinterlands, it is believed is a more efficient strategy, as it would raise awareness on the disease, which is still a mystery to people in rural areas. For it is believed the greatest weapon in the COVID-19 fight is knowledge on and practice of the preventive measures in place.
And it is against that backdrop that the government of Cameroon has transformed some low-cost lodging facilities and stadia across the country into quarantine centers for coronavirus patients. This move comes as the number of confirmed cases in the country continue to scale up in geometric proportions. On April 20, 2020, Prime Minister Joseph John Gute signed a communique creating centers and the missions assigned staffs who will be assigned to some of these centers. Ewane Epole now presents the cartography of these newly created centers in the country.
According to government, the use of low-cost housing facilities and stadiums as quarantine centers is in line with the decision to decentralize the war against COVID-19. In a communique signed on Monday, April 20, 2020, by the Prime Minister, Joseph John Gute, a number of structures have been transformed into potential quarantine centers for coronavirus patients in some regions. In the nation's capital, Yaoundé, the military stadium and the Orca building will be used to quarantine COVID-19 cases detected in the center region. The economic capital has the Mbapelepe Stadium and the Yassa low-cost lodging site. Meanwhile, in the North region, The foreground of the Rundaja Stadium in Garwa has been reserved for cases in that part of the country. The Middle Farm Stadium in Limbe will serve the southwest region. And in the west region, COVID-19 patients will be confined at the social lodging site and the Toket Stadium in Bafusam. The Prime Minister's decision also states that administrative heads of the special centers are assisted by 2 deputies, and the staff is made up of general medical practitioners charged with handling the coronavirus cases and their medical follow-up until the patients are treated.
Let me now take you over to the National Health Emergency Operations Center, that is at the Ministry of Public Health, where we're receiving the latest figures as well as some of the breakthroughs in the follow-up of people affected by the coronavirus in Cameroon. Our reporter there is Raihanatu Saleh, who should be standing there with a specialist to tell us what exactly has come out of that center today. Hello, Raihanatu, tell me, is there any progress in this ongoing fight against the killer pandemic, the coronavirus in Cameroon today?
Yes, good evening, Ben. No news from this end has it that 331 people have recovered from the COVID-19 in Cameroon, and officials have noted with satisfaction the increasing number of successfully treated patients. As we all know, a few days ago, the government launched a campaign to disinfect public places in a bid to mitigate the rapid spread of the COVID-19 in the country. This is what I'll be discussing with my guest tonight, Dr. Eric Tandy. Good evening, doctor.
Yeah, good evening, Sally.
Now, tell us, what is the importance of public disinfection?
You know, we've gradually moved into the phase 2, and phase 2 now shows we already have community contamination. Although we advise for maximum stay at home, but some people still struggle to go out to earn a living. However, like some of the public places, it is equally important that these public places should be disinfected. This is in alliance with cooperation with Ministry of Ministry in charge of rural and community development, who actually works with the councils. And you know, the councils now are involved with this disinfection, especially in markets, squares, and equally other public places. However, supermarkets are equally advised, owner of supermarkets are equally advised that they should also disinfect these public places, because they are places where all and those who bother to go out equally participate.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tandy, for your availability. Well, disinfecting public places is one way of stopping the virus from spreading, but this doesn't mean that we should stop practicing basic hygiene, like washing our hands regularly, and also wearing our face mask, coughing in our elbow, and going out where necessary. Back to you, Ben Mino.
Now, Sally, you don't go away. I have a question for your guest who is out there with you. I want to find out from him, we've not seen a rise in the number of confirmed cases in Cameroon. On the contrary, we have seen that the number of people who have been healed of the coronavirus are increasing by the day. I want to know from him, how are these people being treated, and why is that treatment not being used for all of them, so that we can have the number of people who are healing by the day increasing, like the number of cases that have been increasing too?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. I guess here we're very clear and specific. We have a protocol that is being followed, and however, during the treatment and completion of each individual, and then the individual is bound to return home. But however, if there are complications, and any complications, the individual might stay more. So it is being more as patients are being diagnosed and hospitalized, they are equally being treated and discharged. That is why you have on daily basis, there is an increase in number of those who have recovered from the infection. So that is why it goes in series, it goes in batches, because the more new persons are being diagnosed and hospitalized, that is how the others are being treated and also clear off for recovery out of the hospital. So it is the same protocol that is being respected, except for those who have complications that might stay longer in the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tanje. Thank you, Rahanatu Sali, for those inputs. And our dream is to see more Cameroonians healed from this killer virus. We should be coming back for you for more questions in subsequent editions, with the hope that more will be done to get us freed from this killer disease. Let's carry on now with news and to take you over to the littoral region, where the Mbapelepe Stadium, which is one of the sites to accommodate the COVID-19 patients in Douala, will be ready in a week's time. The sites and at Yassa, also almost ready, were visited by the Littoral Task Force for the fight against COVID-19. We have the details of that outing with CRTV's Rene Kache from Douala.
Technicians busily mounting the makeshift structures that will host COVID-19 patients as the Littoral Task Force team comes visiting the Mbapelepe Stadium. This is by no way preparations for a football match or a live musical concert. It is rather a well-calculated government approach to slow down the spread of the pandemic. Led by Abubakar Njikam, Inspector General at the Littoral Governor's Office, the team is reassured that in 1 week's time, the Mbapelepe site will be ready. By the time the site is ready with beds and other necessary medical equipment, it will host 185 patients. According to the director of the site, Dr. Biholong, serious cases will be immediately transferred to the Lakentini Hospital, which is the competent health structure for such cases. This is the Yassa low-cost housing site, the other site that will host patients battling with the coronavirus. Officials of the site say the structure is almost ready to host 400 patients. The 8 buildings will host 50 patients each. The Inspector General at the Littoral Governor's Office says health kits and other specialized equipment will be installed in the days ahead as the country intensifies the battle to beat out the coronavirus.
Aviation agencies in Cameroon and in Yaoundé most especially are still licking their wounds and praying for the COVID-19 pandemic to be quickly arrested so that their long-grounded vessels can fly again. Most of their international businesses have been grounded owing to the closure of borders and the lockdown of airports, which is dealing a dead blow on their international transactions as well as their international commitments. Constantine Baum now narrates the story tale, or rather the story tale of the aviation industry at a time when the coronavirus has brought everything at a standstill.
If the world had overcome COVID-19, this door of one of the many air transport agencies in Yaoundé would not have been closed. Those who manage the agency can't be found around, but there is a message on the door left for their clients that indicates they are temporarily shut down because of COVID-19. A similar situation found at other agencies in town. If borders have been closed and airlines grounded, then these agencies can't be in business at this time. The coronavirus is gradually putting this sector at risk. If these doors don't open up anytime soon, jobs will be lost. The impact will depend on how long the epidemic lasts and could still be exacerbated by the restrictive measures. Just 2 flight agencies were open and are those directly linked with the airlines. We could spot some few clients who are working out reservation plans with the agencies, hoping that airports will be open not long from now.
Take information about my flight ticket. They told me the plan is not cancelled, the flight is not cancelled. I just have to wait May 15.
With closed doors, many tourists or clients will be trapped. But from some of the messages posted on their doors, some refund had been done. The spread of the virus is invariably linked to travel, and if airports remain closed in order to curb the spread, then it will be difficult for the airline companies to relaunch their flights. If their activities are down, then the doors of the air transport agencies will remain locked, and the temporarily closed messages to their clients will definitely change as well if the virus is not brought under control.
Away from the coronavirus, there was a massive interruption in electricity supply that deprived almost all the entire capital of Yaoundé of power supply for the whole night, even up to the early hours of today. The incident occurred when a heavy-duty truck accidentally brought down one of the power transportation poles of the South Interconnected Network, whose consequences would have been graver but for the prompt intervention of the electricity transportation company. Clarissa Ray Takang watched the technicians of the company as they battled to restore light in the capital city today.
The accident occurred after a fuel tanker driving up the hill to the cement factory in Nomayos experienced brake failure and rammed into the electricity pylon situated along the road. The resulting power outage came about due to the impact of the incident on the 90 kilovolt Oyomabang Nomayos electricity transmission line, leading to an interruption of energy supply from production plants. Technical teams present at the site assessed the damage, which was material in nature, while a safety perimeter was put in place. The execution of various energy transmission projects is said to be making progress in response to frequent power cuts homes and businesses have been dealing with.
Apart from the work we are doing to replace the pylon, we think that we are also on the field. We have our teams in order to replace power transformers in the substation. Limbe is already done. Now we are working on Ahala substation and Konengi in Yaoundé.
Inhabitants are hoping that works on this and other energy equipment will be accelerated in order to considerably ease the electricity concerns.
The 2019-2020 cocoa season has been launched in Cameroon with 4 million hybrid cocoa seedlings made available for distribution to farmers nationwide. The Director General of the Cocoa Development Corporation, Sodekao, Jean-Claude Eko-Afan, is expressing optimism that the cocoa sector in Cameroon will once again regain its lost glory and become one of the main drivers of Cameroon's economy. Luma Slim Davis tells us more.
The Cocoa Development Corporation, Sodekao, is now bent on reversing the production downward trend as the 2019-2020 cocoa season is launched.
We have produced about 4 million plants for the producers of cocoa, and these plants are already available and will be very soon at the disposal of the producers, and we want to call them to come and to get these plants in order to increase their production.
In the Nyong and So division, 40,000 plants have so far been distributed out of the 178 demanded by farmers.
These plants have high productivity value, resisting to the cocoa diseases. We call them to get these plants at an affordable prices of 50 francs a plant.
In Gumu subdivision, hybrid seedlings are also readily available for distribution.
Muslim faithful in Cameroon are gearing up for the month-long period of Ramadan fasting, a period which keeps them away from worldly pleasures from sunup to sundown. This period of long fasting is generally characterized by intense prayers and meditations and acts of generosity to the needy and the deprived of the community. Victor Siga reports on how it all began.
As the Muslim faithful look forward to beginning the month-long fast, prior to that, sighting the moon is of great significance.
According to Islamic clergy, each country has its own lunar crescent. That is why we might not see the moon at the same time. There are people specialized in that.
Fasting involves abstaining from all bodily pleasures from dawn to sunset by fervent Muslims.
The Ramadan does not only abstain the faithful from overeating, but good to everybody around them. Stop gossiping and avoid anything that can harm others.
Determining the start of the fast is a defining factor in Islamic tradition. There is therefore no room for errors.
It is prescribed by the Holy Quran that the days to worship Allah is 12, and it permits us to know that we are effectively in the Ramadan period.
Fasting is one of the 5 pillars Muslims observe. Other acts of worship during this period include the Shahada, which is the declaration of faith, Salat, which refers to the 5 daily prayers, Zakat, also known as almsgiving, and the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca.
And that's where we'll leave it for tonight. Thanks very much for the pleasure of your company. Good night.
CRTV News, ici, toute l'info.